Okay. Good evening. My name is Michelle McNeil, and I will be presenting this evening on the Sofia Urbieta Lane case versus Vanessa Bryant. Okay. So before I begin to dive in to the facts of the case, I wanted to go over the significance of this case in the legal environment of business, right? This case is an example of a civil lawsuit involving contracts and employment law, I should say. And in the specifics of that, right, concerning implied contracts and unpaid labor. So, dealing with contracts, and then from there, branching down to implied contracts, and then employment law, and then diving into the unpaid labor claims, okay, within a family dynamic. And so this case, it demonstrates how the legal conflicts can arise even in an informal family-based working arrangement, right? And so this was definitely a very informal family based working arrangement between Miss Sophia Lane and Miss Vanessa Bryant, okay? So before we get into that, I want to go over the definition for implied contracts, employment law, and then unjust enrichment. We're going to talk about that too, because that also leads to this case as well. So, an implied contract is a contract that is defined as a legally enforceable agreement inferred from one's actions, their conducts, or the circumstances rather than from a written or spoken word, right? Employment contracts, or employment law, I should say, not contracts, but employment law, is defined as a body of laws that govern the relationship between employers and employees, right? As well as the issues of wages, the issues of contracts, and the issues of workforce or workplace rights. And then there's unjust enrichment. And so unjust enrichment is defined as a legal theory asserting that one party was unfairly enriched or benefited, right, from another at their expense, right, and may be required to compensate that other party. So if one person is benefiting from the labor actions or whatnot of the other person, then that could be seen as unjust enrichment, especially if there's no compensation involved. Okay. So the case information in this case, the plaintiff, of course, is Miss Sofia Urbieta Lane. She's the mother of Vanessa Bryant, right? Miss Vanessa Bryant is the defendant, and Vanessa Bryant is the widow of Kobe Bryant. This case took place in the Superior Court of California, County of Orange. The case number was 30-20-0117. 4715-CU-FR-CJC. Okay? And so the documents are available at the Orange County Court if anyone would like to see them. Case information regarding the complaint. So the complaint, Miss Lane sued her daughter Vanessa, claiming for unpaid wages and years of work as a nanny and personal assistant, and alleging her late son-in-law Kobe had promised Miss Sophia a lifetime of financial support. Now, whose lifetime? That wasn't defined, but it was a lifetime of financial support. The factual background behind the case is that Miss Sophia Lane claimed that she spent several years working as a personal assistant and nanny for the Bryant family without getting paid enough. It's not that she wasn't getting paid. She's stating that she wasn't being paid or compensated enough. And just as a side note, Miss Sophia had been helping, her claims in her complaint was that she had been helping Vanessa and Kobe in this role, right, as a nanny slash personal assistant for 18 years when the case was brought about in 2020. She claimed that Kobe Bryant had promised her support financially for the rest of her life. Following Kobe's death in January 2026, Sofia alleged that Vanessa evicted her from their home and stopped providing for her financially. And as a side note, Kobe Bryant, of course, as we know, passed away on January 26th of 2020. Miss Sofia filed this complaint in the Orange County Court on December 15th of 2020. Vanessa Bryant denied these claims, claiming that her mother was trying to take advantage of the untimely death of Kobe and Gianna Bryant for her own benefit, and that she was never properly or formally employed, for that matter. So the specifics, facts of the case, the specifics, right, regarding the employment law, right? We spoke about that. So regarding employment law, regarding the area of implied contracts, right? So employment law, implied contracts, and then unjust enrichment, right? So we keep that in mind. Unjust enrichment. So Miss Sofia Urbieta Lane alleged that she worked without pay for many years as a nanny and assistant. She claimed that there was an oral promise by Kobe Bryant to provide lifetime financial support. She filed a lawsuit seeking compensation for past unpaid work and promises for future support, and Vanessa Bryant strongly denied the allegations and accused her mother of betrayal and extortion. And I will say this, in doing the research for this case, I noticed that it was interesting to see that Miss Sofia was going for the specifics. Not the specifics. She was going for compensation after Kobe's Bryant passing, and not necessarily before his passing when it came to compensation. Kobe and Vanessa, because they're married and they're a couple, and so by the eyes of the law, they are seen as one, provided Miss Sofia with a home, but the home was in the name of the estate, the trust of Kobe Bryant prior to his passing away. So she didn't formally own the home, but she lived in the home, and at some point, Miss Vanessa had told her mom that she wanted her to move in with her, allegedly, according to the complaint, that she wanted her to live with her, and so she was going to sell everything and then have her mom move in with her, and that went completely, different, again, according to Miss Sofia. I personally don't have an opinion, a personal opinion regarding this, and if I did, I would not be sharing it in this video. But I will say that allegedly that is what Miss Sofia is claiming, and there are a lot of reasons why this case was brought to court. So the legal conflict centered on whether there was an enforceable agreement, right, between Sofia Lane and the Bryant family regarding her alleged services. The court would have had to consider whether an implied contract, remember we talked about an implied contract, so an implied contract existed based on her role in the household, right? Whether Lane services were provided with the expectation of compensation, right? Most grandparents, I don't have any children, but my parents are grandparents. And so anytime that my brother needed a babysitter for any of his children, even though he lived out of state, when he was here visiting, if he needed a babysitter to take care of business, my parents were always there. There was no words of exchanging of any type of monies, and there was no expectation that my parents were the babysitters or the nannies per se for the day. The expectation was, your grandparents, and most grandparents are not charging their children to watch or take care of their children, even if it's for a long period of time. They're family, and that's how they see it. Like, these are my grandchildren, and they're like they're my children once removed through the parents, and so they are willing to take care of their children. They don't see it as a chore or a job. They see it as a privilege. Nothing against Miss Sophia. I'm just saying, for the most part, based off of the research. And then also the credibility and evidence supporting an oral promise of lifetime support, because then you get into whether he said it, and that's very difficult considering that he's not here anymore. And so his spouse is claiming, no, he didn't say it. And this is her mother that she's saying, no, he never told my mother that. So it made it very interesting, right? The case also highlighted the legal complexity of informal employment arrangements in family contexts, and how oral agreements are difficult to prove in court. They're very, very difficult, because one person, as you know, is going to say, they said this, and the other person, as expected, right, because they don't want to pay or they don't feel like they're obligated to pay, is going to say, I never said that. That was never said. I don't even know what they're talking about. So it's a lot of he say, she say. That's very difficult to prove in court, and especially if the person has passed away. If you factor that in, it's really difficult. So the case outcome in 2021, this matter was resolved out of court. I'm not sure of the details of the settlement, because they were not made public, but the court records do show that the case had been settled. And so the key learnings from this is, if the expectations are not explicit, even family-based work arrangements can result in legal issues. So if you're not clear and concise with the expectations of, whether it comes to compensation for pay, expectations of what the person may be doing, the expectations of their role as, hey, you're grandma, and I'm just asking you to watch my children while I go to this event for this foundation, or whatever it may have been. In that case, that would have been like an expectation that it was explicit, right? Because grandma would have known, oh, I'm grandma, and I'm here to just watch my children. Again, I don't have a personal opinion in this video, right, on the case. I think it's unfortunate that it had to come to this, and I think that it's a lesson learned for both parties. Oral pledges have legal risks and are difficult to implement. They're very difficult to implement. I work for the school district, and so when my students were in conflict, and one would say, he said this to me, and of course the other one is going to say, what? I never said that. I didn't do that, and I didn't say that, and that was not me. Oral pledges have the legal risks and are so hard to implement, right? Because again, a person can say, no, I didn't say any of that. I didn't agree to any of that. I didn't know, that was never said, which is one of the defenses for that Miss Vanessa Bryant had chose to take. And even among close relatives, the case emphasizes the importance of written agreement in both personal and professional times. It doesn't matter if they're your sister, your brother, your mother, your father. If it is a business transaction, get that thing in writing. You would save so much time in court. You'd save a headache, because you'd have a clear expectation of, I'm an employee at this time. When you call me for this many days to watch the children, I'm no longer grandma, I'm a nanny, whatever the case may be. That could have been very, that could have been eliminated had there been a written agreement, right? Regardless. This case highlights the significance of estate planning. I cannot emphasize estate planning enough. And defined limits in family interactions by demonstrating how grief and financial worries may turn into court battles. And I'm going to say this. I will say this, because again, I don't have a I don't have a personal opinion about this. I don't even have a dog in a fight. I can really say something on both sides' behalf, right? But I will say this also. When it comes to Miss Sophia, I believe at some point Miss Sophia became accustomed to a certain lifestyle as well, which I don't know if that was taken into consideration or not, or spoken of or not, because I didn't find that in any of the court documents. But she chose to go with the three areas, which was the unjust. Um, I'm sorry, which was the employment law, right? She chose to go with employment law. She chose to go with unjust enrichment, and she chose to go with the implied contract. So easy to say. I wish them both the best of luck.